Hi there. Welcome to your Love Talk. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode today. If you have not yet subscribed to this podcast, please do so now. Your support is so greatly appreciated. Today, I am pleased to welcome Dr. Staci Smith to this podcast episode. Dr. Staci is an empowerment coach and the host of the Staci Speaks Hope podcast. Dr. Staci received a miraculous healing after receiving a kidney disease diagnosis, and she had an incredible faith in God's healing power. She is now passionate about helping women break free from triggers that hold them back. Her story is a testimony of trust, faith, and healing. Listen to Staci as she speaks. Hi, Staci. It is so nice having you on the Your Love Talk podcast today.
Thank you. It's so good to be here, Dr. Beverly. I appreciate you having me.
It really is good. So, you know what? I met you online again. We were actually doing this podcast training together, and trying to be a podcaster can be really challenging because it's a whole new way of learning, how to be out there. So it was really good to have you volunteer to be able to be part of this.
Yes, we're learning together, learning forward, and I'm so grateful for just being able to share. I'm only a couple steps ahead of you, but I see you're getting out there, and I'm really proud of just the effort that you're making, and that's how we learn. And
that's true. Wonderful. That's true. So, Staci, can you tell the audience about what you do?
Yes, in my heart and life, I am an women's empowerment life coach. I do have another job, but that is what I do all day, every day in my heart, just wanting to see women get free from the things that hold us back, responding to things that we've been told to believe about ourselves that aren't true, and most of all, that are hindering us from being who God created us to be and walking in the calling and purpose that we were created for in the earth.
I like that. And I like the faith-based part of it too.
Absolutely. Without God, all things are not possible. We got to hold on to him. So
yeah,
that is what's gotten me through lots of things in my life.
I agree. And what made you become a podcaster?
I was a guest on some friends' podcast.
Okay.
2 years probably before I started. And I kept saying, I want to have a podcast. And I would talk and people would hear me and they said, you should have a podcast. And I was like, and one day the My Seven Figure podcast ad came up and there said, this must be the answer. So I signed up and have been participating, went through the training, and I actually joined the mastermind. So I got some in-person times working on my podcast. And I really just got inspired by this community, which largely is faith-based, which also inspired me in a way that made me say, this is kind of a little nudge from God to walk into another way of sharing what he's done in my life and touch the lives of others, and just hoping to just expand the reach of sharing our stories.
Yeah. And that's what happened to me too. I was all of a sudden an ad popped up, and then I was like, should I actually attend that free session? And I did. And I was so inspired, and it's a wonderful community, just being able to share together and learn together.
It really, really is. I've been in lots of big communities and never, ever seen one like this. So I 100% endorse it.
Love it. So you talked about going through adversity, and I know that you reached out because, the podcast, my podcast is really about getting to adversity, getting to the other side. Mm-hmm. And you shared that you've been through some adversity yourself. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. I think I have several stories, but I'll say my biggest story and the one I share that is most awe-inspiring of really how good God is and how he shows up. After I had my son, had issues with my kidneys all the way back to 17 years old. I had high blood pressure and was just given a prognosis that, just watch your blood pressure. We're not sure what'll happen. As I got older, there was a chance that if I had a pregnancy, that there might be long-term effect.
Okay.
So when my son was born, I had a biopsy and found out that my kidneys were failing. My body was attacking my kidneys as if they were foreign organisms. So when I ended up eventually going on dialysis, and I got a call one day from someone who my sister knew through someone that said she wanted to give me a kidney. Mm-hmm. We had never met. And
Wow.
he called me. That was just the spark. And it followed a prayer that I had said, okay, Lord, things were starting to be a little more challenging with my dialysis. I did it at home. I was very active in church. I was a praise dancer. I learned how to do dialysis while I was driving in the car because I did the time you do at home. People would look at me. At practice, I would do it depending on the time because I had to do it overnight.
Yeah.
And just the blessing and the miracle of being on the other side of the diagnosis. I talk about that in the book that I'm writing, is actually called On the Other Side, There Is Hope.
I love that title.
So when you say on the other side, I just smiled when I heard you say that before. That was another reason I said we should connect, because that speaks volumes in my mind. That phrase, it always reminds me of what life was like. You get that call.
Yeah.
Doctor says, hey, you got to come in and we're going to put you on dialysis today. That's how it went for me.
Wow.
When the labs got to that place. And I was in shock, obviously, and life changed. And then after the years, and it was 13 years from the original diagnosis to the actual transplant, that life looks so different. And to
Wow.
walk in faith where someone prayed for me and I heard God say, the healing is done.
Ah, I love
It might not
that.
look like it right away, but the healing is done. And I believed it.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times you hear those things, you're like, yeah. I know. The Bible says, by his stripes we are healed. And it was like, no, I believed it. It was like standing in my kitchen. And from that point, I walked in places that people were just couldn't believe that I just kept going and that I didn't do what the doctor said. I actually took myself off the transplant list. That's how hard I was going for believing what God said. I was like, I don't need that. God said he was going to heal me. Yeah.
So Staci, how old were you when you actually got diagnosed?
I was 31.
Okay, so you were really young. So then when did this person reach out to you to say, hey, I can get tested to give you a kidney?
Mm-hmm. The diagnosis was 1995. The call was in 2007, so 8 years.
Okay, so you were on that list for 8 years.
I got off the list right away because as soon as I got the diagnosis, this lady was a kidney patient and she was my OBGYN nurse. And I taught her nephew in school. It was just like this, the way that people come into your life.
Yeah.
She prayed for me, and that's when I heard it. And I got off the transplant list immediately.
Wow. Okay.
My ex-husband thought I was nuts. And he was
Yeah.
very he was making it, trying to get me on the list. And I was like, no, I need to be on it. And I was telling people, you don't have to pray for me to get healed anymore. God already told me it was done. So even in the church, in faith spaces, people still thought I was just off my rocker.
You're crazy. But then how did this person then find you? How do they know that you needed a kidney?
So her best friend went to church with my sister.
Okay.
And she was motivated to be a kidney donor because she married a man, they were dating at the time, who had given a kidney to his father. So she got to see the process of one going from being on dialysis and very sick to back to life.
Yeah.
Through transplantation. So she said, well, I think I want to do that for a single mom, which I was at the time.
Yeah.
She was going to be a good Samaritan donor and just give, and whoever got it, got it. But when she heard about me, she called, we talked, and we met to do all our labs. We had the same hyper personality, bubbly personality.
Yeah.
We had the same food to eat without talking to each other. We even had down to the same favorite donut.
Oh my goodness.
And her daughter's birthday is the same day as mine.
Oh my gosh. Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Like my kidney sister. And she's got a kidney. That was the whole thing too. And she's like, it didn't have to be, the blood type had to match. My sister even got tested and she was as close of a match as my sister, but my sister hadn't had her kids yet when all this started. And I said, I don't want to put her through that.
Yeah.
So, and didn't know what the genetics were behind my kidneys failing the way they did.
Yeah.
So now I know things, but.
Wow. So then, Staci, you had to wait for, you said 13 years?
Well, it was 13 years because I got the diagnosis. She called me. I was on dialysis for 5 years. I didn't even go on dialysis immediately. So I had 3 years of just watching my kidneys, doing all kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Changed my diet, went off of dialysis on my own once, got really sick, got a virus around my heart. I mean, so I didn't go on dialysis immediately, but when I was on dialysis and I did it a month where I went in for hemo,
Okay.
and even at that, I was still healthy. They were like, "Oh, you can't eat." I was having lunch because it was noon. I was like, "Bring me my lunch. I'm at the dialysis clinic." And everybody's like, "Who is this woman? What is wrong?" I just
Wow.
the definition. And that's one thing I really speak to people about when they get a medical diagnosis. Do not become your diagnosis.
Mm,
Do not let your
yeah.
diagnosis define you.
Yeah.
That's what's happening in my body. Our bodies are in constant change. Our bodies have
Yeah.
everything in it that they really need to heal.
Yeah.
And we just need to find out what that is. I changed my diet. I was a vegan. I was seeing a nephrologist one day and he said, your protein is really low. You need a burger. And I was like, okay, we got a burger. I love meat. So I was like, yes, it's my
Okay.
you. And that type of thing, I just went with it. I tried. I learned a lot about my body. I learned a lot about healthy eating. I ended
Yeah.
up doing a 90-day herbal detox where it resulted in me eating 80% raw, 20% cooked food.
Mhm.
And again, it just wasn't enough protein the way I was doing it. I'm sure if I
Yeah.
go back to that type of diet ever again in life, I'll know that I need more protein, but it's
Yeah.
just got to be plant protein.
Yes.
I was just used to eating a certain way, but that learning a lot about that, learning a lot about health and nutritional treatments for dis-ease in our bodies, because that's what it is. It's just
Yeah.
dis-ease, like giving our body what it needs to be in healthy equilibrium.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. And that's actually so important. And you talked about, just knowing that God told you that you were healed, and that put you on this path where you were just going to have this incredible faith and you're going to keep going, and nothing's going to stop you,
Yes.
and then it's really about that mindset, because if you believe that you're not going to make it, then you can easily die much
Yeah.
faster.
It's a blunt way to say it.
Yeah. Hmm.
The absolute truth. I mean, I walked away
Yeah.
from all of that, getting into the disease and
Yeah.
walking in the space of stress will
Yeah.
kill you.
Mm, mhm. Yeah.
I was a stressed out young bride, young mother. My son was 2 months old when I got the diagnosis. I was on bed rest from 20 weeks because of the high blood pressure. I
Yeah.
started as a 17-year-old. Well, we moved across the country. My senior year in high school, I was supposed to be senior class president. And I was like, where? What? Nobody asked me about. And so it was just having those big emotional reactions
Yeah.
that affect my body, did affect my
Mm,
ability to be calm and at peace.
got it.
And so who knows? I don't
Yeah.
have anybody else in the family who's gotten this.
Yeah.
So
So so then, Stacy, you worked on taking care of your body in terms of nutrition.
mhm.
And then also having that mindset where you really trusted God that He was gonna heal you.
Yeah.
But how did you then manage your stress level so that you could feel a lot more at peace?
That's such a good question. I don't know that I intentionally went about it. I didn't know about that then. Over the
Yeah.
course of years, I have learned about really just journaling, and I did some of
Mm,
that. I've
yeah.
always done. As a little girl, I would sing and worship and pray and write. So there was always that part of me that was my outlet for my melancholy emotions.
Mhm.
On the more stressful side, definitely activity, working out, physical activity, being outside. I love being outdoors, living in
Yeah.
California. Spoiled. I moved back to California first chance I got.
Did you? Okay.
My family moved back also while I was in
Yeah.
college.
Yeah.
Being in spaces where you can walk in 4 hours, be by the beach in one side
Oh.
setting, and 4 hours later be in the mountains. So I
Yeah.
have lots of options, a lot of that type of connecting with God through nature, slowing myself down. As you can see, I'm very high energy.
Yeah.
And so energy is one thing, but mindset and calmness of thought is another. So really
Yeah.
teach myself that even though I have a lot of energy, I don't have to be in hyperactive movement.
Yeah.
Learn how to be still and quiet. Many things. There's one thing as a friend of mine taught me called sit and listen. And we would
Mhm.
sit for an hour and just journal. People wrote songs, wrote dances, whatever came up. And we
Yes.
just heard from God to sit and listen and just journal. And I would always start mine, speak, Lord, your servant is listening.
Oh.
And the beauty of that was the things that God would download to me about everything in life.
Mhm.
There was a peace that was born in me and really built up from the inside out because my natural tendency was to have frenetic energy. And
Yes.
I was like, be still and know that I am God. I
I
got it. It's all gonna,
Wow.
it's gonna be okay. And you don't have to know what comes next.
Mm.
There's a book written by Stormy O'Martian, Just Enough Light for the Step I'm On.
Yeah.
I can just walk in where just point me in your direction, Lord, and I'll take one step at a time to get to where you want me to go. And that's how I think I learned to manage. And then again, identifying that stress is a tactic of the enemy to distract us from, what did you say, God? If you said this, that noise over there doesn't matter. And I apply that in my life today. Look
Yeah.
at our world. And if we don't have that to
Yeah.
hang on to and to really live by
Mhm.
day by day, moment by moment, then our physical body reacts with dis-ease.
Yeah, that is so true. Powerful words, Stacy. And being still, it's such an important thing to do. And you mentioned scripture, and I truly believe that God speaks. We're able to hear God speak
Yes.
in our stillness. He speaks
Yes.
all the time, but when we're still, we can actually hear that
Yes.
voice, right?
Yes.
And being in that place where we're not worrying about the future or worrying about what happened in the past, but learning how to be present.
Yes.
And it's so difficult for so many of us to do, right? And that
Yes.
just takes a lot of practice and being able to just say, okay, this is what I have in front of me. And I just have to trust that no matter what anybody else is saying, what the doctor is saying, and I have to hear from God and then walk in that.
Yes. Absolutely.
I love that. Who were your support systems when you were going through all of this?
Oh, my family, and at times I felt like I stressed them out because my faith was just so audacious.
Yeah, they thought you were crazy.
Are you sure? Um, I have friends that I could talk to that really helped me. Trying to think, I didn't have a therapist at that time.
Mhm.
I hadn't delved into that at that point in my life. But I had a spiritual mother who had cancer multiple times, and the Lord would tell her, "Go to the doctor and tell him you have cancer." So having somebody who walked this faith walk like I did,
Yeah.
and God would heal her. I mean,
Mm.
many bouts of that. Cousin, just people that were my champions. My other cousin had multiple myeloma, and she's still around. And so again, people who were in the battlefield of our minds, going through
Yeah.
this,
Yeah.
had a little bit more of a ability to understand. A lot of people who heard me, supported me, didn't understand either, but they didn't quite have the emotional reaction my family had of like, "What are you doing? You're scaring us." Sure. That's what God said. It was like, yes. And then I would be more adamant the more they questioned me. And so it got to be like, okay, we're just not going to talk about this part.
Yeah.
Even in
And
most recently, I had
uh,
something else and it was that same type of thing. And I was like, it's
yeah.
okay.
But it's hard for family members. I mean, you have this amazing faith, but when they hear the diagnosis and they're afraid to lose you, and they have to trust that whatever you're saying that God told you, has to be truth. But then there's this fear that, oh my gosh, is she doing
But
something
yes.
wrong? Should she be being more proactive in all of this? Because again, the fear is, is she going to be around?
Yes.
And for you to have that incredible faith, like, where does that come from?
In the real world, you could say you're stubborn. And it's kind of being stubborn for God. Even I'm thinking of one of my bigger supporters too was my son. Even though he was young at
Yeah.
6 years old,
Mhm.
somebody said, "Why does God love you?" He said, "Because that's just the way it is." And
Yeah.
like got older, and he had a more recent diagnosis of a breast cancer, and he said, "If you believe you're going to be okay, I believe you're going to be okay. I'm not worried because you're not worried." And so
Mhm.
having somebody who looks to me as his mom have that kind of faith, I think that helps me continue in that because
Yeah.
that now is like it's my identity. My
Mhm.
identity is to be one of faith.
Yeah.
I don't really consider it any other way. I don't know how else to be.
Mhm.
I don't know. Yeah, when I think about it, I really don't nothing else really comes to mind. That's just kind of I got to a place where that's all I know.
Was that instilled as a child?
No,
No, okay.
it was just I was the kind of kid, I guess, when I went to church as a kid, I was like, "There's gotta be more than this."
Yeah.
Always looking for more than this.
Yeah.
So once I got to a place of really investigating, interacting with, knowing God through the Holy Spirit, through those voices, those things that,
Yeah.
you
Mhm.
don't do during church because you're having all this other stuff happening, the service part and the structure and being in different denominations. And I left the family denomination because it was too slow and quiet and went to another one. And now I'm non-denominational because that's just for more free flowing, which is a blend of mostly charismatic
Got it.
church. So I think in that space,
Yeah.
there's more proclivity to audacious faith as a way of being.
Yeah.
And what I have seen and known, even before I went on dialysis, I had a hernia surgery. I walked in church and worshiped. I walked in church bent over because I had the surgery a few days later, like on Thursday. I went to church on Sunday. I walked out standing straight up because in worship,
Mhm.
I was healed.
You're healed.
And so
Wow.
when I know God can do that, there's nothing
Mhm.
anybody can tell me
I
otherwise.
love that. I love that. Did you say that you also got diagnosed with breast cancer
Last year or
last year?
2021, I and I
Okay.
20 yeah, and I again, it was stage 0,
Okay.
supposed to be,
Got it
non-invasive,
early. Hmm.
very early,
Yeah.
but my challenge with it was, because in my kidney search, there was a light machine that was invented in 1929 that kills cancer cells, and the government suppressed it. Intravenous vitamin C kills cancer. There's just so many other ways to
Okay.
deal with cancer. And I said, "You can deal with stage 0 exactly the same way you deal with stage 1, 2, 3, or 4?
Okay.
Why?" And
Mm.
I understand from the medical community, there's that risk, and you don't wanna give somebody advice that something's gonna be okay, and
Of
then
course. Uh-huh.
nobody really knows how and why cancer grows
Yeah.
in our day to day. I mean, I know more things now, and again, it goes back to diet,
Of course.
but, eh, I was resistant to just responding to going to have surgery right away. So, again, it was one of those things, "Okay, Lord, show me what to do," because I needed them to help me make it make sense to me. As a math major, I was a
Okay.
math teacher. They're like, "Well, there's 15% chance it could become cancer, invasive cancer." First they said cancer, and so you get even the different stories. It's cancer, it's not cancer. And I was
Mm.
like, anybody had an 85% chance of winning the lottery, they would take every dime they had and go play.
Not everybody, but
Oh,
okay.
yeah, more people than not. A lot of
Yeah,
people
yeah.
say 85 is way bigger
It's
than
a it's a
50.
good number, a good percentage. Uh-huh.
It's a number. It's a
Yeah.
bigger percentage than 15. And
Yeah.
so just understanding the emotional toll that's taken on women when they hear
I know.
cancer in their breast and they're coming at you like, "Here's your diagnosis, here's surgery, here." "Excuse me, you
Yeah.
just told me about this. Give me a moment to let that set
The
in,
process. Mhm.
process," and they're trying to schedule the surgery right away. I had a doctor like, "Oh, yeah, I
Mhm.
got a space on my schedule next week," and I was like, "And what that got to do with me? We're not I need to know more."
Yeah, yeah,
That's how the process is done, and
yeah.
I'll say the game is run.
Yeah,
Respond right away in fear. You're gonna respond right away if you haven't had time to go pray, or if you don't pray, or and if you just the big C.
yeah.
So, for me, being somebody who didn't respond right away, even in that, it was almost another year. In July, I got the diagnosis. I had surgery in May,
Mhm.
and when the surgery was done, they did not find the cancer that was there.
So what did they take out?
They took out cells that were around it that were calcified,
Okay.
and because they had put in these radioactive markers, they had to take those out.
Okay.
And so they said there were 3 tiny specks of invasive cancer in that, but that was not what they originally diagnosed or were looking for. So I said, "God, you used that."
Yeah.
But even in that, I mean, my audacious faith, I was having the conversation with the surgeon. I said, well, so how much are you going to take out? I'm not very big, so I ain't got a lot to work with here. And it went from not doing the surgery at all. I was going to have a full mastectomy. And
Oh,
because
wow.
again, they give you all those options.
Of course.
And what do you know? As a patient, that recovery in and of itself was going to be so intense.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't have to do all that. And it's one
Hmm.
of those moments, get still and let God talk, slow down, and again, it was over months.
Okay.
And I looked at the doctor and I said, first of all, where I walked in that day, I said, you must feel really different today. And she said, why? I said, because you have so many people praying for you because you're doing surgery on me. And
Wow. Mhm.
I know,
Wow.
who
So,
is this? I'm telling you, I'm always that
so you
girl.
had you had your entire support system, church, everybody praying. Wow.
Everybody,
Nice.
churches, multiple churches all across the country.
Oh, wow. Hmm.
And then she was trying to explain and she was getting flustered. And I just stopped. And the Holy Spirit was like, just stop her. And I said, don't worry. Your hands will be guided and you will not remove any more tissue than you need to.
Ah, wow.
Just, okay. Dr. Beverly, I woke up 45 minutes after the surgery and I was like, I'm hungry. I was in the car on my way home within an hour after.
Wow.
It was, so I know when God's hand is on you, no matter what,
Yeah.
the kind of things that happen.
Yeah. So after the surgery, what did you do? Was there any other follow-up?
Well, they wanted me to do radiation and
Okay.
I told them my story. Because
Okay.
it's just in case it destroys the cells. You have a certain amount of time to decide if you want to do anything
Yeah.
else. And I just said, I just don't. I learned about the metabolic approach to dealing with cancer,
Okay.
full blown cancer, because cancer is a metabolic condition. That
Mhm.
if our cells are not fed the things that feed it,
Mm.
it's going to shrink and die.
Ah,
And
okay.
even talking to one of the surgeons, he's like, "Yeah, well, you could go on a Mediterranean diet. That does seem to help. They don't offer you that first."
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and I get it. I mean, I'm a breast cancer survivor, and thank goodness, mine wasn't a zero. It was a one B they unclassified it as. But you're right. I mean, when you hear the words cancer, it's almost like you're in panic mode, and so it's like, okay, I got to get out of my body. I don't want it in my body. I don't want it to grow. Even when
Yeah,
you're able to say, okay, I'm going to wait that long, that's truly an amazing faith because normally then you go into panic mode, right?
yeah,
And I'm healed, and God chose that way to heal me. And that's the thing too, God chooses different ways for people to be healed. It's really about being still enough to know what God wants for you.
right.
And I know not everybody gets healed for various reasons, but it's really, again, being in that stillness and having that faith and trust and having that mindset. Because I remember when I went through it, I had to get my mind straight, right?
Yes,
I had to
yes,
believe that I was going to be okay.
right.
And I had to keep moving and doing whatever he's called me to do and not just sitting down saying, why me? Why me?
Wallowing in the
Yeah.
woe is
Yes. Woe's me. Yeah. So I love this grand, this amazing faith that you actually have.
Thank you.
Yeah. So when it comes to some of the lessons that you've learned going through these obstacles in life, what are some of them?
The lesson is mm, eh, being able to reach out to God, not turning in, not isolating, as you talked about, sitting,
Yeah.
reaching out to people who can be supportive and encourage you, listen to you in the range of emotions, obviously, that we go through when
Right.
things are happening, to be able to be authentic in our expression. I think holding everything in
Yeah.
kind of feeds whatever is off, dis-ease, emotional distress, those types of things. Staying in that mindset of whatever it is, the why me answer was, why not you? Because God said,
Mm.
I chose you because you can handle it.
Yes.
Because you could handle it.
Yeah.
It's because the way I walked through life at least got people's attention enough. If I pointed them to God, I have this audacious faith, not because of Staci, but because of who God is in my
Yeah.
life, who I know God to be, who he is capable of being for
Right.
everybody if we are able to attach to that and what healing looks like. The kidney transplant
Yeah.
is a treatment, but I walked in it as healing.
Yeah.
There are people with multiple kidney transplants. I shudder to think that
Mm.
I would go back to needing dialysis again.
Yeah.
Getting a kidney from a living donor is a huge. That was you saw how God lined that up.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
even
That's a
in
miracle.
was a miracle.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think, believing in miracles, living in miracles, keeping your mind focused on the greater outcome, the great giver, the healer,
Yeah.
and to walk through the emotional parts. I called it healings,
Mm.
the emotional healings
Yeah.
that took place as I walked through those 13 years.
Mhm. Mm. Yeah, I like
It was
that.
just about some kidneys.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and is that healing of not just the body, but
Yes,
the mind and the spirit
and the emotion.
and the emotions.
Yes.
I love that. So, Stacey, that's what inspired you to start your coaching business?
Yes, it was that, and my experience with a coach showed me again, it was a change of mindset. I was
Okay.
a principal at art school. I've taught
Yeah.
some of the famous children you watch in they're young adults now in movies today. Zendaya was my student when somebody really big who just blew up, but many
Yeah.
of the other students that came through that school, and I was ready to go back to school at the end of the summer, and I was like, "I just don't wanna do this anymore,"
No.
because of the adult politics and all the things of just being in that role.
Yeah.
And I got to experience an event with a life coach, and I said, "Oh, it's just that I can choose to look at things through a different lens
Yeah.
and to see myself in this, how do I have my highest and best life? I can still be in all of this, but my focus doesn't have to just be on the drudgery of the day to day." And so
Yeah.
that type of empowerment, that type of shifting, and then as I really looked in, and this is where more of the healing work went, looking at where my triggers and trauma came from was
Mm.
my little girl. I could go back to 7 years old. I know when it happened.
Yeah.
So now my work focuses on helping women identify their little girl, the lies that she heard,
Mhm.
the ways we either were cared for or not cared for by people that while we were forming our own identity,
Yeah.
how we walk into who that is and how that keeps us from being able to move forward in life, in love, in business, in our
Yeah.
relationship with the Lord, and most of all, to walk into our calling.
Yeah.
God created you to speak to the people He created you to speak to.
Yeah.
He created me to speak to the people that am to speak to. And if I am unable to speak, they don't get to hear what He wants them to know
Yeah.
through me. Now, of
Yeah.
course, He can choose somebody else,
Of
but I
course.
take that as a personal call
Yeah.
to act.
Yeah. I love that. And you're so right. We oftentimes get stuck
Yes.
in our wherever that wounding is in our childhood. That's where we get stuck. And until we go back and
Yes.
begin to identify, where we're stuck, and then to be able to work through it and heal through it, that's when we get our breakthrough to be able to move forward with whatever it is that God has called us to do in a successful way.
Absolutely.
I love that. So how did you know to go back to figure out where that wounding was for you and to determine that it was when you were 7 years old?
When I really got to the crux of saying something's not right, I have a relationship with the Lord, I know the Lord, but I had a rage is the only word I can describe for it. An anger that was just underneath everything else that could come out,
Yeah.
kind of just simmering.
Yeah.
And I realized I don't know, God showed me when I was going through deliverance,
Yeah.
really just studying about I don't know. It wasn't a particular study. It was just I knew it was that, and the connection I made from being perfectly okay to somebody yelling and cussing at me because the way I look, I was the only black kid in school.
Mhm.
And first, it was the confusion. Of course,
Yeah.
I didn't do. I wasn't even talking to anybody. I was playing happily by myself,
Yeah.
minding my business, and then all of a sudden, this catastrophic thing just happened out of the blue. Like I felt attacked
Yeah.
physically, but it wasn't physical. And then from that, I got angry.
Yeah.
And even after that, I was moved to a school where I went to school with Black kids, and they told me I talked like a white girl.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was Black on the outside and white on the inside. And I was like, what?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And this is all before 8 years old,
Okay.
up to 8. So right
Yeah.
in there. Those two
Yeah.
things were back to back. So that's how I know
That's where you
life
got
was
stuck.
good, and then it wasn't. And after that,
Mhm.
I was angry when I fought when I got to school with Black kids. And then after that, I was like, I dare somebody mess with me. And I was just like that girl. And I'm 5'4", little, but I was like, I don't care, bring it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I was just audacious enough even in that. So audacity
Yeah.
is who I am. How
Yeah.
I audacity. I was like, I'd fight anybody. That's how I showed up. People didn't bother me because they're like, this little girl is crazy. We're not even gonna mess with her.
Hmm.
I in myself, I was like, I'm 6 feet tall. I'm not gonna be ever feel like that again. So that constant state of being in fight or
Fight,
flight
flight.
and
Mm-hmm.
the high blood pressure from a medical condition, that cortisol
Yeah.
always on
Always
overdrive,
on. Mm-hmm.
still on overdrive probably.
Wow. Mm.
But I learned to manage it. I tried to do Orange Theory, which is supposed to raise your cortisol, and I was like, I gained weight. Like, this is not good for me. That's when I was in Toastmasters, and I actually wrote a speech about this isn't actually good for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Living high cortisol, doing high cortisol to exercise is not helpful.
Yeah, yeah. I'm glad you figured it out. That's so good, because you cannot be in fight flight mode for an extended period of time. It will impact your body, and for you to be able to work through that. And it's interesting because, when you haven't gone back and you haven't really identified whatever that wounding is, that trauma, then oftentimes what happens is you will move into the fight mode, but also you become shut down because you really haven't processed and grieved,
Right.
and
Yeah.
so and that being able to grieve whatever it is that you've been through is so important to be able to break free from holding on to that the hurt and the pain, because behind anger is usually hurt and pain.
Absolutely.
So you're that tough girl, because you had to be
Like,
tough. It's like,
I'm not gonna be hurt like that ever again.
exactly, your protective wall.
Yeah.
So, wow, it's such an amazing thing to be able to understand what happened so that you can actually help other people.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you see that in the work that you're doing with other women?
I do.
You do. Mm-hmm.
And that's really what led me to write the workbook that
Yeah.
goes with my podcast, because my podcast talks about that. But God just gave me a way to tiptoe to coax her out. I have one little part
Yeah.
where I talk, if your little girl is hiding, maybe you don't even remember being a little girl. I
Mm.
hear so many people say, I didn't get a chance to be a little girl. I had to grow up at
Yeah.
5 years. I had to take care of people
Yeah.
always.
Yeah.
Then you got to go back before that. There was a time.
Mm-hmm.
And I just asking little questions like, what made her smile?
Yeah.
Not just what made her cry, because you got to ask
Mm-hmm.
that too, but remembering when it was pleasant. Then it makes me tear up to even think about it.
Yeah.
Because how many people do you know
Mm-hmm.
that were robbed of that? And
Yeah,
now as
it's true.
adults walk through life
Yeah.
devoid of that space of innocence.
Yeah.
That's the gift that God gives us to be young.
Yeah. I know. Well,
And how much you miss out on as an adult
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because you can't capture that. You can't go back to that. I mean, I still like to play.
Yeah. Yeah.
If I ever played, would I have that even reference point? Maybe not.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of compassion for women that I know who lost their innocence in, molestation ways, parents who are on drugs and had to take care of them. Mine was just being bullied, which was still huge because
It's big. It's being bullied is big, especially as a little girl, because in that moment you don't understand why, and why so that's hard.
Yes, excuse me. Absolutely. And then what the workbook goes on to talk about is then we go through life looking to validate, even if it's our image, I'm unlovable. Me
Yeah.
just showing up as I am isn't good enough. I have to
Yeah.
be in myself. So that was another piece of it, of really just helping people identify the lies that then became the truth.
Yeah.
We manufacture a false truth because we're young.
Yeah. I hear you.
Know any better. So we're like, oh, I thought that was the truth, but oh, this must be the truth. And you go through life and then you continuously justify and manufacture situations that everything has to go through that lens. It's filtered through that lens. I always put like your hand over your face. I can see you, but I see my hand before I see you.
Yeah, that's so true. So, Staci, this is called Your Love Talk. And again, it's really about how to get through obstacles which you've been through, and being able to get to the other side, and also do it in a way that you are loving you,
Yeah.
right? What do you do to keep going when things get a little tough?
I remember that I don't have to have all the answers.
Mm.
I think so many times when we walk in places of being capable, we think we have to fix it
Yeah.
ourselves. We think we have to do it by ourselves, for ourselves. I find ways to play.
Mm.
I live a mile from the beach.
Oh,
I
nice.
go and being by the water, whether it's a lake and a beach, a river, there's a calming effect that has on me.
Yeah.
Back to things, being out in nature, hiking,
Mm.
just enjoying. I have the best view of the sunset from my parents'
Oh, that's
backyard, and I look at sunset.
beautiful. Mm.
And Lord willing, they happen there. Most of the days I can see them without overcast.
Yeah.
Those types of things are just those moments. Again, like you said, try to be still. Make sure I'm intentional about being still
Yeah.
and being physically active, getting fresh air, being around people that I can laugh with,
Yeah.
talk to, just play with, be playful with, and also people who know me and love me enough to tell me the truth about myself if I'm in a moment or having, just behavior that's a result of my trauma,
Yeah.
a result of my upset that can say, maybe you can look at it another way.
Yeah.
And reminding myself to be humble enough, pliable enough, open enough, because being that doggedly determined about things spills over.
Yeah, of course.
And people be like, "You're stubborn." I said, "Oh, I'd be dead today if I wasn't," because I wouldn't give up. But
Yeah.
at the same time, there's that giving up. It's like, God, Lord, I trust you. That was my line. And in that, it puts me in this place of surrender
Yeah.
that I'm going to be okay. And I don't have to do it all because, Lord, I trust you. You know the beginning from the end,
Yeah.
and I don't have to.
Yeah, I like that.
So it's a release of responsibility that was never mine in the first place.
I like that. Any word of affirmation that you tend to use to encourage yourself?
I'm looking at it. I am loved.
I am loved.
And that was a fairly recent way to coin it that I
Yeah.
got. And just remembering that whenever I was going through the things I was going to, I was not alone. God was there and I was loved
Loved. Hmm.
through it,
Yeah.
before it, during it, and after it. I am loved no matter what is happening around me, and I
Yeah.
can be in that peace.
I love that. I love that.
Love
What?
talk. That's perfect.
Yes. Your luck talk. And what is next for you?
What's next is continuing the podcast and building a community so that women who are listening to that, and there's men that
Yeah.
also resonate with it because they know their little boy went through some of the same types of traumas,
Sure.
and creating a community space off of in a digital platform. I have a Facebook group,
Okay.
and really to build that where people can just share and be in this growing healing space together.
Yeah.
As we learn from learning, we're doing the same thing, but we're different points in our process with the podcast, the same type of thing in this healing journey, and ultimately working through the workbook, having workshops that people can get that hands on. Let's say it out loud. Let's talk about it, but you're not alone. And I think combating that spirit of isolation,
Yeah.
especially as we're delving into painful places,
Okay.
is a big space. And ultimately, I'd love to do a retreat where people can come together and again, be in outdoor spaces and just celebrate the healing as it comes.
Yeah. especially since you're by the water, by the beach in California. That would be amazing. How do people find you?
I have my at Staci Speaks Hope on Instagram. It's Dr. Staci Speaks Hope on YouTube. And I have a link in there to order the workbook.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Sorry, it was Dr. Staci, for being on the podcast today. Your words are so inspirational, and I really appreciate your presence.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Dr. Staci, for sharing your miraculous story. You remind us of the importance of having an unshakable faith, even in the midst of struggle. Your life is a testimony of God's healing power, even when we don't see the miracle right away. Your faith is audacious. Continue to speak words of faith and hope to inspire other women in their journey of healing. I will leave you with 2 affirmations from my Love Talk card deck. The first is, I receive clarity when I am silent. And the second is, I walk by faith because fear no longer controls me. Please remember to visit yourlovetalk.com to purchase the Love Talk affirmation and couples card deck and my book, Mended, Healing Your Heart After a Broken Relationship. To follow me on Instagram or Facebook, please visit Dr. Beverly Booth. If you have enjoyed this episode, please remember to like, subscribe, and share it with your family and friends. Thank you for tuning into this episode today. This is Dr. Beverly from Your Love Talk. Blessings.